Hey, greetings, friends. Welcome to April 8th. This is going to be lecture one. Oh, man, missing y'all. I am reflecting as we talk, drinking from my Olivet mug, hoping that you all are staying safe. I wanted to start off by just telling you how thankful and privileged I was to watch all of your presentations. I think I mentioned that in my short video that I did on the Facebook page, on which I kind of shared some thoughts about your presentations. But you did a fantastic job, and I'm really excited to read your papers, which I'm hoping to do this weekend. I've got 192 ungraded assignments right now in my queue, and so I'm taking between Thursday and next Tuesday to really hone in, dig deep, and spend a lot of time grading. So hopefully I'll be able to get a good portion of that knocked out while you are on your Easter break. So returning, you'll know kind of where you stand grade-wise. So this is a unique opportunity for us as a class to have a little bit of a conversation about racial reconciliation in light of the liturgical movement of the calendar, because this is, in fact, Holy Week. And what I want to spend some time today doing is really helping you think through, as a future ministry leader in some way, shape, or form, or even as people who are going to participate deeply within the life of the church, what and why does it matter that we have this sort of liturgical movement within the church calendar that we call Holy Week, and how might that matter in light of our understanding of racial reconciliation? So if you go to your notes, they're going to be here on this page for the videos. They should be right at the top. You can just click on that. Download a copy for yourself, and that way you can kind of look and follow along even as I'm speaking. I mean, you're not going to need it, but you can have it there if that helps. I'm going to kind of walk through kind of the content and material. So to start in here, I want to bring up a concept that was spoken about a little bit through Derek's presentation on Monday, and that is this idea of Black liberation theology. And in liberation theology really covers the gamut across the board of oppressed minorities. So it's learning to read the scriptures and engage theology through the hermeneutical lens of those who find themselves on the periphery, marginalized, disempowered, disenfranchised, and oppressed. And we have Latin American liberation theology, we have feminist liberation theology, LGBTQIA, we have but what I want to speak specifically to, just for a little bit, because I'm not going to have time to really spend a good deal of time dealing with Black liberation theology like I'd like to. I would prefer this be an entire week, but we've really kind of lost some time this semester, and so I want to make sure that we cover all the areas, and we might be able to even circle back around a little bit towards the end as we talk about paving the pathway for reconciliation. But I do want to bring to your attention, one of the foremost thinkers in Black liberation theology is a man by the name of James Cone. It's the person that Derek did his presentation on, and really did a great job of kind of exploring some of the concepts surrounding Black liberation theology. But what I want to spend some time talking about it in light of Holy Week, because I do think the liturgical calendar gives us an opportunity to reflect upon the ways in which we can form and shape our people to be cognizant and aware of their participation in systems that oftentimes lead towards injustice. So for James Cone and Black liberation theology, access to the transformative power of the gospel is often mitigated or dampened by the assumptions of privilege that most of which we're often unaware of, and we've talked a lot about that within the context of this course, and really only becomes possible for us as we identify with the oppressed. So it's sort of the renouncing of our privilege, or at least a deepened sense of awareness of the way that privilege consistently shapes our engagement with text and with theology, and learning how to identify with oppression. Now, in terms of how that oppression is understood within the context of the United States, Cone is going to be very clear to talk in terms of color, whiteness, and blackness. But I want us to think of whiteness and blackness not simply as color, but as condition. And so whiteness for Cone is understood as condition of presumption, power, and privilege, which often leads us towards blind indifference or corrupting justice. And so one of the things that we need to be aware of is that whiteness as a condition, as a frame of reference, as an unquestioned condition of being in this world, according to liberation theology, distances us from the good news of the gospel, because the good news of the gospel is the coming of the kingdom that lifts up the lowly and brings the powerful off of their high horse. And if we're unwilling and unacquainted with our privilege and unable to confess that privilege, then we will find ourselves on the wrong side of history and the wrong side of the participation even of the kingdom. We will find ourselves more often than not defending and supporting the status quo rather than leading into the purposes for which Christ calls into question power and privilege's propensity to exploit, manipulate, oppress, and do great damage through violence and fear. He writes an incredible book that I wish I may next time that I teach this class, I may recommend this book as one of our texts. It's called The Cross and the Lynching Tree. And I think one of the things that Cone does is helps us realize how deeply woven into the consciousness of blacks in the South lynching was, how deeply fearful it made blacks in the South, and how inadequate the theology of the white Southern church to ever associate the victimization of vulnerable blackness through lynching with the cross of Jesus Christ that they often said that they proclaimed and spoke about regularly. And he spends the book really helping us understand the implications of the disassociation with forms of violence and the struggles of violence against the vulnerable with the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. And one of the things that we're going to talk about in these set of lectures regarding Holy Week is how we can re-understand the cross in its identification with those who suffer at the hands of injustice. So I think Cone wants to push us into a deep evaluation of the ways in which the unconfessed, unconscious whiteness that continues to pervade and invade a faithful reading of the gospel and theology must be called into question in order for us to move as the church into a more faithful expression of God's kingdom desires. And I believe that that's much of what is at work in sort of liberation, in the liberationist theology program. Now, when I speak of liberation theology, I need to understand that, and I think I've mentioned this in the past, that it's often associated with Marxism, and I want to say that we need to avoid that sort of association. I don't believe that those two are necessarily woven together. But I do think it's the recognition that at the hands of the powerful, the poor often suffer. The poor, the marginal, and those who are oppressed. So what I want to do is I want to make our way in this lecture, and I want us to talk a little bit about the ways in which we can understand the power of Holy Week to shape and form our people. So, because I want to keep each one of these lectures at about 10 minutes, I'm just going to say this. One must understand that for me, observation of the Christian calendar isn't a suggestion, but really is requisite for the church. And I don't mean it should be mandated by some sort of institutional power. What I mean is that in a way of marking and keeping time, the Christian calendar invites us into our participation in the story of Jesus yearly, which should shape and form the church to understand its place in light of the lordship of Jesus Christ and the coming of his kingdom. So I believe that the Christian calendar, starting at Advent and moving through Pentecost, is a means through which the church reperforms its story every year. And so there is something significantly powerful about liturgy, about the movement of the calendar in the life of a congregation, in which it's reperforming the story of Jesus over and over again. And we want to spend some specific time in this set of lectures talking about the implications of that for Holy Week in of itself, because Holy Week is, for us, in this conversation, where we are in this moment in time absolutely necessary for us to think about our participation in unjust systems and the way in which the story of Jesus might call us to engage, thereby building possibilities for reconciliation moving into the future. I'll pick up on that in Lecture 2.